What's up, everybody? This is a very special Coffee with Ken episode. I've got something I'm going to blow your mind with today. I want to share with you the number one most important piece of advice I've ever gotten from a mentor. And what's really crazy about this is this advice was first given to me 27 years ago. And it's probably still the most relevant advice I've ever gotten in my life. If you are struggling at all in your life for any reason at all, this is going to answer the reason why your struggles are happening. And I'm going to give it to you under one condition. I want you to go into the chat right now and type yes. And I want you to subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to give you 15 seconds to do it. And if you don't do it, then this countdown timer is never going to stop. All right, so first of all, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for commenting in the video. But I gotta share a little bit of the background with you. If you're following me right now and you're paying attention to this video, you know that I've got a lot going on in my life. And I've got a lot of really cool businesses happening at the same time. We're running a major gold mine in British Columbia that's producing significant amount of money in gold. We have an incredible training company with amazing people right across Canada that we're helping to get into real estate investing. We're building resorts right across Canada. We own 5 cottages and we're scaling that right now, and we're doing short-term rentals with them. We own Canada's oldest and best hot tub company, and I manage all these businesses together. But I got to tell you, it wasn't always like that. And this piece of advice that I'm going to share with you right now is what made me snap. I remember back in my 20s when I was in law enforcement. I was a police detective. And I did a lot of really cool stuff in law enforcement. I was an undercover drug cop for a while. I was on a SWAT team. I got into major crime investigations. I even did police interrogation, but I didn't like it. And I didn't realize it at the time that I didn't like it. What I didn't like about it is I was working terribly hard and working in a lot of dangerous roles. You know how much I made in the first 10 years? About 50 grand a year for doing that stuff. Even when I was working in major crime investigations in Ottawa, Canada, I was only making $110,000 a year to do that stuff. Some heinously dangerous stuff. And on top of that, you know, I wasn't good managing money, so I was just keeping up with the Joneses. I'd get paid on a Friday, and by Monday I'd be broke again, and leveraging line of credits and everything. And I had a mentor in my life who actually helped me to start my first business, which was a mortgage company. And before he actually started that, we developed a little bit of a relationship where he was actually more like a father figure to me, or, you know, an uncle, if you will. And I remember having this conversation with him one day while I was still in law enforcement, and I hadn't even thought about starting my first business yet. But I was kind of getting really frustrated with what was happening in my life. And I know this is probably the same situation that you're in. If you look at your life right now and all that's happening in it and the money that you're making, are there any frustrations? If you're frustrated about anything at all in your life, then I want you to go into the chat and say, I'm frustrated. Like, you guys, first thing you got to do is call it out. If you are frustrated, then acknowledge it, but also acknowledge why you're frustrated. This advice that he gave me changed my life forever. Literally changed my life. And there's one thing I want to tell you about this change and this advice that I'm going to give you right now. I'm hoping I'm catching you on a day when it's the last straw day, if you know what I mean by that. And I'm hoping that you take this advice, but I'm also going to warn you about it. If I present this advice to you, just like he said to me, if I give you this advice and you don't act on that advice, where you're going to go is going to suck. You're going to become a hater. If you look at any of the top figures, the top authorities in the world, they all have haters, and I have my fair share of haters. But I've talked to some of these haters, and you know what I've found when I talk to them? Most people that turn into haters, they're people that weren't willing to take the advice that I gave you right now. Because what's going to happen if you don't grab the bull by the horns and fix your situation? It's a slippery slope. You're going to turn into a negative person. That negativity is going to start compounding, and then you're going to start resenting everybody around you that's doing well. And because you resent them, the only thing you're going to be left with to do is to be a critic of them. And the advice I'm about to give you right now is going to be that one quintessentially important piece of advice that could stop you from falling off the cliff and could be the precipice for you making all the money you want in life. Anyway, are you ready to hear it? I got to tell you a story first, because this is the way he first told me. You know, I remember that day we were having a drink together, and And I was like, man, like, I just want to change my situation. How do I do that? And he said, I need to tell you a story. So I'm going to say it to you. I need to tell you the story. And this story is going to take you on a bit of a journey with me. And through the beautiful essence of professionally published video, I'm going to add in some things for you to look at along the way just to keep you on point with me. But here's the story. I want you to think back to what you think 1952 would be like. Let me explain what I mean. This story takes place in 1952 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, for those that don't know and have never been there, Las Vegas is the desert. And it has to do, it's a love story. It has to do with a young couple madly in love with each other and the lengths they would go through in order to spend time with each other and be part of each other's lives. Now, these two people in specific we're talking about, one's name was Jim, a young man in his late 20s who worked at a Mercedes-Benz car dealership in Las Vegas, Nevada. And his girlfriend, who he wanted to propose to and he wanted to marry, her name was Sally, and Sally lived in Los Angeles, California. Now, as they were building their relationship, Jim would often drive to California on the weekends, and that's really all you could do affordably back in the day. But the wonderful thing about Jim is that he was the top salesperson at the Mercedes-Benz dealership, so every Friday afternoon when he was driving to Los Angeles, the owner of the dealership would actually give him a convertible Mercedes to let him take it on the drive. So this one Friday afternoon, Jim finishes work at 4:30, gets in the Mercedes. It's 105 degrees outside. It's that dry desert air that he saw all around him. He puts the top down on the car and he heads for the highway. Can you picture it in your mind? I want you to think about this logically for a second. I want you to just picture that. Close your eyes for a second and think about the heat, that dry heat, and think about a dustiness to the heat, which would be that desert, that situation that he was in at the time. So he gets on his car. And now the first thing he's thinking about as he's leaving Las Vegas is not his girlfriend in this situation. It's the fact that it's about a 400-mile drive, direct drive from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and there's only one place to stop for gas. It's about halfway along the drive. Now, if you go there today in 2024, and you go down that highway, it's all populated. There are hotels and resorts, there's casinos, everything, and there's 100 places to stop. But back in 1952, there was one place to stop. There was a little rickety gas station about halfway down the road. So he started driving around 4:30 in the afternoon, and right around 7 o'clock, he pulled into the gas station, and he had to get gas. The tank was almost empty. So he pulls up to the gas station. I want you to visualize this with me. Think about an old gas station in 1952. What comes to your mind? One of those big old gas pumps. And you know those old gas pumps, they had those little balls inside of the chamber on the top when you started pumping the gas, and you heard that noise, clink, 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 as the gas went into it. So he gets out of the car, he grabs the pump, he starts filling it up, and you would always, it was completely trusted back then, you would always fill the car first, then go inside to pay. So he sat there, and it took about 10 minutes to fill the car, and he was thinking about his girlfriend that he was going to see, and how the future for him was just so full of promise with his skills in sales and this beautiful woman that he was going to be married to. And as he was doing that, he was just holding on and resting himself against the car. Can you picture this in your mind? Well, he finished pumping the gas, and he goes, hangs up the pump, and he goes to enter this tiny little like confectionery type store gas station. And as he opens the door, he hears bells ringing. And you guys can picture this in your eye right now, right? You know those little doors, they had the bells right on top, they ring in, and as he goes in. And the first thing he sees as he goes into the store is a hallway. And as he walks down the hallway, he can see the guy that he has to pay for the gas at the end. And the hallway is full of shelves with all kinds of groceries and food on it. And as he starts to walk, he hears this weird noise. And he asks himself what it is. And he says it sounds like an old hound dog moaning. And he can't quite place it. But as he's walking down the aisle, he looks to the left in the last aisle before the counter, and at the end of the hall, he sees an old hound dog sitting on a mat, sitting up, and it's howling. And I guess I have to kind of try and do this for you. So it's a little bit of the... So he goes up to the counter, he pays for his gas. He can't stop thinking about the fact that he's only 2 hours away from his girlfriend now, and that's what's really taking up most of his mind. But in order to make conversation as he's paying, he says, "Hey, what's wrong with the dog?" The guy behind the counter says, "Don't worry about it." And he didn't really think twice about it. He just gave him the money for the gas, he left, and he headed on to Los Angeles. He arrived in Los Angeles around 8:30, had an amazing weekend with her, just constantly thinking about how lucky he is in life. Sunday afternoon comes and he's a little bit late getting out of there, but he knows that gas station closes at 9 o'clock. So he's got a 2.5 hour drive to get there. So he's got to get out of there by 6 or 6:30 at the latest. He gets in the car at 6:30, knows he's got to get a bit faster. But back then, man, if you floored it, you could see that gas cage going down. So he had to be careful about it. He drove all the way back. Again, it's hot. It's 106 degrees. It's steamy. It's smoky. It's dusty. But he makes it there to the gas station. And as he pulls into the gas station at 10 to 9, he starts filling up the gas. And as he's doing that, he starts to think about that dog, that hound dog. He's wondering if it's still there or not. But soon enough, he's going to know. He didn't realize this, but the anticipation was even growing to see if it was still there. So he finishes pumping the gas. He puts the pump back on the pump stand, and he goes in. Here's the bells opening, and as soon as he opens the door, he hears that dog again. But it's louder. It's more of a... So he walks right up to the counter. He gives the guy the money. He says, "Hey, man, what's wrong with your dog?" And the guy says, "Don't worry about it. It's none of your business. The dog's been like that for a while." And the guy says, "Well, shouldn't you do something about it? If your dog's obviously in distress, maybe you should help the dog." And the guy says, "Mind your own business." Well, Jim got a little bit upset, pissed off about that guy, and felt he was rude. He left and said, "Screw it." Goes back to work. And over that next week, he had one of the best weeks in sales he's ever had. But he couldn't help but think about that dog and how this owner wouldn't do anything at all to help him. Well, he missed a week that next week. He couldn't go to California, but the following Friday came 2 weeks later. And his boss gave him the newest Mercedes convertible on the lot to drive that weekend. He heads off to see his girl in Los Angeles. And he starts thinking, I wish there was some way I could go somewhere else for gas. He even went as far as to look at other routes to see if there was something there, but there was nothing that would work. Around 8:30, he pulls into the lot. The sun is just setting in the west. It's hot. The sand is in the air. He can feel it. But as he pulls up to the lot and he turns off the car, he can now hear that hound dog crying from inside of the garage. And I'm going to spare you of my interpretation of him. So he's hearing this hound dog the whole time he's pumping the gas, and he's getting pissed about it. He's already working out in his mind what he's going to say to the guy when he gets into the place. He pangs up the pump at the end. He goes inside. There's the bells ringing, and all of a sudden, it's deafening. The dog is going on. And as he's walking up to the counter, he's already yelling at the guy. He doesn't even realize it. He says, "Man, what the hell is wrong with you? Why won't you help your dog? It's been 4 weeks now, and the dog is still in pain. What the hell is going on?" The guy looks at him with not a bit of understanding in his eyes and says, "Man, just forget about it. The dog's out of control. There's nothing you or I can do about it." Jim just gets angry and starts yelling at him. "What the hell are you talking about? You can help your dog. You must be able to help your dog. Take him to a vet or something. What's wrong with him? Why won't you help this dog?" And the guy says, "There's really nothing that you can help." And he looks at him, and Jim says, and he's yelling at him, "What do you mean there's nothing you can help? What's wrong with the dog?" And the guy looks at him and says, "The dog's sitting on a nail." Jim just freaks out. "What do you mean sitting on a nail? What the hell are you talking about? Why is the dog sitting on the nail? Why won't the dog get off the nail?" And the guy looks back at him and says, "I guess it doesn't hurt enough yet." When my mentor told me that story, he finished the story and he looked at me and he says, "You have all the ability you need to become anything you want in your life. You can go out there and change any situation you're in. If you're not happy with the money you're making, go make more money. If you're not happy with the relationships you're making, go get some help and fix the relationships. If you're not happy with anything in your life, you have the God-given inherent ability to fix those things you're not happy with. You're never, ever going to develop the ability. You're never, ever going to fix those problems until you decide to get off the nail. Eventually, those things that you toil with, those things that disturb you, will inevitably become so damn disturbing that you're going to want to fix the problem. They say an average person will only strive to fix a problem when the pain of the change becomes less than the pain of staying the same. Friends, here's what I can tell you today. I've been through it all. I've made millions. I've lost millions. I've made millions again. I've fixed every problem I've had in my life, and I still strive to fix some of the problems. But what I can tell you is It's scary. Like actually going out of your way and doing something different. The risk you have to take to fix the problem is probably the scariest thing you're ever going to go through. When I ask you right now, if you have these problems, why aren't you trying to fix them? It's because the fear of making the change, the fear of doing something different, the fear of trying to fix the problem and not really knowing how to do it is so crazy that reluctantly but inevitably most people just decide, well, at least I know what this feels like. They're afraid to make the change. They're afraid to break out of their comfort zone. The fear of change will only occur. This is what I love. The last piece of advice my mentor gave me that day. Change will only occur when your fear of making the change becomes less than the fear you get for staying the same. So I want you to think about this for a second. We all start off in life in these inevitably humble, open, risk-taking spaces as children. And we're willing to take every risk we can to do whatever we want. But then as we grow older, we become conditioned. We experience the pain of things going wrong. And we know how painful it is when something goes wrong. And that kind of becomes the fiber of who we are. And we avoid changes because of it. But I want you to think about where you're at in your life right now. I want you to think about how much money you make in your life right now. I want you to think about the things you wish you had, but you don't have. I want you to think about those things for a second. And I want you to think about this. If you stay on the same track you're on now, how's it going to be different? If you want something different, you got to do something different. Anyway, I promise you that if you really want more out of life, all you have to do is get off of the nail. Friends, listen, if you appreciated this message today, then do me a favor, go into the chat right now and tell me what it did for you. And if you're going to decide today to do more, to get more, let me go on that journey with you. And go into the chat right now and tell me what it is you're going to improve and make better.